Happy Monday. How's it going?
It's going well. Welcome, Colleen. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy Monday.
Yeah, happy indeed. How's everybody's weekend? What did y'all do?
I visited a few sites in Budapest. So I'm in Budapest, Hungary
Oh,
right now, waiting for a conference on Thursday and Friday. So I'm giving a talk on Friday at CrunchConf. Really excited about that. So for me, this is the Monday evening data chat.
Uh,
Fantastic view out of the Danube. Yeah. How about you, Joe?
it was good. What did I do this weekend? I went to Denver and spent a lot of time with
oh,
Bill
that's right.
Inman, so that was a lot of fun. Um, yeah, we every time I hang out with him, it's just fun. We chat for hours, and so he walked me through the entire history of the technology and data world, and so that was really fascinating. I actually recorded a podcast, so we can be dropping that at some point, but. Yeah, definitely honored to have somebody like him, as a very close friend, and it's cute. He calls me his little brother now, so I think
I could see Bill saying that.
yeah, yeah, I love that guy. So they don't make him like that anymore. I'll tell you that. How was your weekend, Colleen? What did you end up doing?
It was good. Let's see. Saturday, I went into Salt Lake, met up with some friends, listened to some live music, so that was
Nice.
fun. And then Sunday, just kind of prepping for the week. Went to the driving range. I'm getting into golf a little bit, or trying to, which is it's fun, can be also frustrating at times, but
It's
thank
surprisingly
God for
hard.
YouTube. Though I was like, I do a few reps and then I'm like looking up like how to swing a golf club properly. So and then going back. So yeah, but
You
no,
do that.
it's a good time.
You do that while you're on the driving range. Are you like checking your form on against YouTube videos, or how do you?
So so this time I wasn't filming myself, but I literally because I'm such a newbie, so I'm still learning, like the differences between clubs and how far you should be able to hit with each one. And so I was using a 7-iron, and I was literally on YouTube being like, because I felt like I just wasn't doing it right.
Hmm.
And I was like, I don't know how to coach myself. So it was nice. Like YouTube has those YouTube shorts, and I was just like, oh, okay, I'll, and just pick up one cue from that. I was like, oh, this works. So still lots of progress to be made for sure. But it's fun.
Well, it's fun. It's cool. You're still trying out new sports and stuff too. So we'll get into your past in a second, which is I think very fascinating. But for people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, so I'm Colleen Fotsch. I just moved to Utah a few months ago. I'm a data analyst at Podium. And before that, I was a competitive athlete for many years. I swam at UC Berkeley, won a few national championships, and then went on to do CrossFit, competed in the CrossFit Games a few times, and then got into bobsledding of all things for about
It's
a
like
year
the
and a
most
half.
random sport.
Yeah. And then took a hard right into data analytics. And,
Hmm.
and now I'm here.
Nice. I have to ask, like, what attracted you to bobsledding, and how was that experience for a year and a half before you made the jump to data analytics?
Yeah. So prior to getting into bobsledding, I think my exposure to bobsledding was, I would watch it when the Olympics were on, and then Cool Runnings,
Of
which
Yep.
course, Cool
love that,
Runnings.
love
Yeah.
that movie. And one of the pilots, Kaylee Humphreys, who multiple gold medals, amazing athlete, she reached out and recruited me and was like, hey, have you ever thought about getting into bobsledding? I was like, can't say I have, only because I had no idea how people got into the sport. And it's usually through recruiting, or bobsledding also hosts a combine, essentially, which you can do either at the Olympic Training Center, or they have other spots around. But so yeah, she was like, hey, there's a spot opening up at in Lake Placid where the Olympic Training Center's at. Do you want to come out and give it a shot? And I was like, I got to at least try it. This is kind of a once in a lifetime kind of thing. And so ended up making the national team. And the goal was the Olympics, but ended up tearing my ACL before that season qualification process started, which was a bummer. But honestly, looking back, kind of a blessing in disguise. And at the time I was in school for data analytics. So the plan was always to go that way afterwards. It just ended up happening a little bit sooner than I was planning on it. But it was a wild experience. I mean, there is absolutely, I remember getting into the sport, and before we actually started sliding, asking people, you know, what does it feel like? It's got to feel like something else that I've done. Like, is it like a roller coaster? Is it, they're like, it's nothing like anything you've experienced. And they're 100% accurate. It is nothing. Actually, I did hear someone say that it could potentially feel similar to if someone put you in a metal trash can and then threw you down a hill. So that's kind of similar, I would say. But you're not going like upside down or anything. But yeah, it was a wild experience. And so I had come out to Utah a few times because there's a track in Park City. So it's cool to be back here in Utah.
Well, it's good to have you back. Yeah, I think we met at the DBT meetup in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
Like, what is she doing here? Because I remember you from the CrossFit Games and regionals, and you were an absolute like killer. You know,
Oh,
I mean,
thank you.
I knew who you were, and I was like, then you come over for an autograph for my book, and I was like, I think I wrote like I should be getting your autograph instead. So like, I think I was more starstruck seeing you at a meetup of all places. Like, what is she doing here? This is like the weirdest thing I've ever seen. But yeah, it's interesting. It's just funny how worlds collide. Actually, Mark Shepard had maybe a half serious, half joking question, but is it possible for me to work from data back to bobsledding? I feel like I missed a window in age and fitness level. How did just when they picked you, was it I mean, just maybe for maybe a minute, spend about how do they choose athletes? Because it's not like you're training from the age of a young age to be a bobsledder.
No, very, very few. They do have, you know, some junior teams and stuff, but yeah, like to your point, there's no, you know, when you're 8 to 10 years old, there's no club bobsled team like in Arizona and California and stuff like that. So
it's horribly dangerous for kids.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Especially, I mean, I think like I tell people you got to be like a little bit crazy to do any of it. But I look at, you know, like skeleton and luge and I'm like, that would be insane. But I would say as far as recruiting for bobsledding, so I would say primary sports that the females come from are track, volleyball, softball. So very like high power athletes. And then for the males, football, rugby, track, and track tends to be a big one because the two main things are power and speed. So for me coming from CrossFit, that was the thing that Kaylee, when she recruited me, like that was my strength. Like strength was my strength in CrossFit. I liked lifting, high power output kind of stuff. The stuff that I needed to work on in CrossFit was the longer endurance stuff. And I definitely had a base there coming from a swimming background, but you know, swimming endurance and running endurance are quite different things. So, but that was definitely a humbling experience going into bobsledding and learning sprinting mechanics because I loved lifting. I was like, let's do it. Let's just lift all the time. And they're like, hey, you got to figure out how to.
If anyone wants to see what she's talking about, just go check her out online on Instagram or YouTube. She's a beast.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, learning how to run properly was very, very humbling. Because in CrossFit, my running workouts were primarily focused around, 5K distances and stuff like that. And being able to run, 400 meters at a time and then go do, 15 power snatches or something like that. So very, very different than sprinting for, 20, 30 meters. So that was really interesting. So I would say, yeah, as far as recruiting for bobsledding, definitely power and speed are the main things.
So there you go, Mark. If you wanted to join the bobsled team, just get really powerful and very fast. Sarab asks, and we'll get into the questions or the topic in a bit. But Sarab asks, are you into HIIT? That's high intensity interval training for people who don't know what that is.
Yeah, I would say so. My training right now has some CrossFit elements, but definitely at a lower volume. The intensity is a little bit lower because my my goals are now a lot different than when I was competing full time. I definitely don't suffer as much, I would say, in my workouts, just because I don't need to push myself to that level anymore. And for my workouts now, I want them to give me energy and to kind of prep me for my day and my week. And if I go ham in a workout, I'm just going to be a pile of mush for work, and that's not helpful for anyone.
So you're not trying to do like Fran before work?
Oh, no.
For
Yeah,
people who don't know what that
definitely
is,
not.
what's Fran for the
Yeah, so Fran is 21:59 of pull-ups, kipping pull-ups, and thrusters, which a thruster is just with a barbell, a squat, 2 overhead. So you go 21 pull-ups, 21 thrusters, 15 pull-ups, 15 thrusters, 9. And it's painful. I mean, if you're within like the CrossFit space, like Fran lung is a thing where you're going so hard that you have like you're coughing and whatnot afterwards.
I've
So
gotten it
it's
before.
like,
I couldn't speak for like 2 hours after. It sucked.
yeah,
I mean, probably good for everyone
it's
else, but like it was
yeah, no,
like, you just can't breathe.
it's yeah. But no, as far as like the HIIT training and stuff, I definitely have elements of that in my training. I mean, Joe, you've seen it in the programming like I've given to you where it's, work to rest and stuff like that. And I think that's a really good way to still get some intensity in your workouts, but still regulate it in a good way and have that active recovery built in there. So, yeah.
So the notion of longevity and health and wellness, which we're talking about, I guess, so you switch from being, a super high performing athlete, a competitive athlete, to being a data analyst and working in tech. That's not the most traditional route most people take to get into this industry, but here we are.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned in the show notes, tech is, I think it's notoriously a meat grinder. I think Matt can attest to this. It's just, it takes you in, it spits you out. And, it often involves long hours and, and I would say the lifestyle of a lot of techies I know too, and I'm lumping data people into this, but it's, work-life balance is supposedly a thing. It's often maybe a mirage. And then, I would say I think everyone that I've talked to, they want to work out, they want to do things that are good for their health, but often they're sitting at a desk all day. And after that, maybe depending on the cities you're in, you're getting drinks with your friends, or depending on the city, maybe other indulgences as well. You know what I'm saying? So it's an industry where I think that the motivation is there for health and wellness, but it's elusive, it seems like. So
yeah, no, it's definitely different. And like you and I have talked about, it was definitely a big shift for me going from competing for so long and my, every choice I was making around sleep, nutrition, recovery, all of that stuff was for this goal of, going to the Olympics or going to the CrossFit Games. And when I shifted into, okay, this is no longer serving that purpose, and I need to have a different mindset and purpose for, why do I go to the gym? Why do I want to eat the way I want to do, and also, like you brought up the social aspect, like, when I was competing full time, I kind of just didn't really have a social life. So it was kind of easy I wasn't in those, scenarios of like, okay, I'm out with my friends, they're getting drinks. Like, can I have a drink? Is that okay? You know what I mean? And kind of navigating that stuff or, traveling more and being out to eat more and kind of figuring out how to not have a, like, all is lost mentality. Cause I think that's a thing too, is that it can be hard to feel like, well, there's just no good options, so who cares? Let's get everything. And I think that's a slippery slope. And so, but yeah, so for me, it's definitely been interesting to kind of rewire, reprogram all of that to, okay, now my goals are about, I want to feel good, I want to look good, I want to move well, and I want to feel all of those things, not just now, but in 20, 30, 40 years. And I think that's my biggest why right now. And to be able to use like your fitness to go do other stuff. Like for me, for example, like I didn't, which sounds so silly, I didn't really realize until semi recently, like when I was competing in sport, I didn't really have hobbies. Like the gym was my work and my hobby, and like there was no time for other things. So like now I'm actually getting into hobbies and realizing that my fitness that I'm still doing, it allows me to go do these fun things that I want to do outside of the gym. And yeah, I think it's tough because I think in this space of, you know, data in tech, and I'd like to think that we're kind of past that point of like, oh, it's cool to, you know, be telling your friends like, oh, like I didn't sleep for 5 days and like, you know, I'm just destroying myself and like, look at all I've done though. It's like, that's not cool. Like, that's not, I mean, yeah, it's like, oh, you did this thing, but now you're like cutting 10 years off your life. And it's like, and you feel miserable doing it. And so, but I think that's the thing is like, it's not the, I think that's the tough part is that it's really the basics that like people need to start with. And it's not the sexy things. It's the, you know, getting enough sleep. It's the going on a short walk in the middle of the day. It's the, you know, 80% of the time eating good quality food, drinking water. Like these are, and most of these things cost zero money. Like it's not like it's an expensive lift or anything like that, but I think it's the realizing and deciding that it's important enough to you to make those decisions. And I think a lot of that comes from like asking yourself, why do I want to be doing this? You know, is it, okay, I want to feel better. Well, why do you want to feel better? Well, I want to be able to play with my kids and my grandkids. Okay, like, and I think it's like kind of figuring out like, why is this important? Because I think while this stuff is so simple, it's not that it's easy per se, right? It's not always easy to make those choices, but I think where I see, and Matt, you brought this up, is that I think a lot of people wait for the motivation to be the trigger or the catalyst to get them like out of the bed in the morning, to the gym, to, you know, to choose the better quality meal or, and I think a lot of times like motivation is so fleeting. Like you just have to, a lot of times motivation is the result of you making the choices that are aligned with these goals you have of feeling good and living a healthier, better life. I think if we all, I mean, I know if I relied on motivation like every day, I don't know, it'd be like flip of a coin whether or not like I'm going to make it to the gym or not. And I think that's the biggest thing is just starting with those basic things because it doesn't have to be overly complicated. Like you don't have to be, it's like a magic, you know, combination of the right supplements and, you know, the right combination of wearables and like all the stuff. It's like, it can start out really, really simple. And I think it's just building up the momentum and that causes, you know, you to make better choices. And that's the thing. I think once you start, whether it's, and not that you have to start with all of them. I think like for me, what I like to tell my clients is like, let's start with something that you know you can do, that you know you can be consistent with. It's better to tackle one thing for a few weeks than try to do 5 things. Yeah. And then you're like, and then you're just bummed because you're like, well, I didn't do that. And now you feel like you failed. It's like, well, let's just get an easy win here. And like, let's build on that. So yeah, I think it's just about figuring out where to start and then just starting. Like whether it's the tiniest step in the world, like who cares? It doesn't have to be this big grand gesture. Like big things are made up of, as corny as that sounds, like big things are made up of really, really tiny things. And that's all you got to do. Like it's just the little things that can move the needle.
And especially when the baseline of people working themselves half to death in tech is so bad, just like you said, Colleen, adding some of these small things like drinking water, choosing some good things to eat, adding greens to your diet, going on walks, starting there, it really gives you a lot of mileage, and then you can build on top of it.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. For example, right? I mean, hydration was a thing, right? This is all like sort of covered in chalk now because I take it to the climbing gym. But it's like,
nice.
Drink 3 of these of water every day, right? Pretty easy.
Right.
you know. And I mean, so for the audience, Colleen, we work together a lot. She's my coach, but not just fitness. It's like everything else in my life. Cause I realize like my sleep and everything else, you know, I been an athlete myself, you know, in my life. And it felt like once I don't know, it's weird. Cause once you're an athlete, you always feel like you need to chase kind of that feeling, you know, kind of like Uncle Rico and the Napoleon Dynamite. So, you know, but it's one of those things where I feel like, you know, you also learn successful habits that translate over into other things, you know, and so, but at the same time, I think it's easy to focus on that end goal and miss all the basics, like you were saying, like just staying hydrated during the day. I don't drink enough water, right? Like it's, you know, and so that's been awesome. It's a, you know, a very tangible difference there. And then sleep's like the one thing where I'm absolutely terrible at it. I mean, I try, but it's, you know, I look at your Instagram stories and like you just have this angelic sleep. You have your readiness scores in the 90s, and I'm like, wow, must be nice. I'm Matt. I'm pretty sure you sleep pretty well though. I think you're
these days, I've made a lot of adjustments to make that happen. I think I was sleeping worse when we were like at the peak of running our business with a lot of employees and writing a book together.
That was just stressful.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
good idea, right? But no, you and I are traveling a lot, Matt, and it's like, you know, you're in Hungary right now and having adjusted jet lag actually twice in a week, I think. You're in Paris London last week.
And my strategy, I had to come back to New York, so my strategy was to basically stay on European time when I was in the US.
Is it working?
Mostly. I mean, I'm a little bit disrupted, but I'm mostly normal. It's funny too, when you travel a lot, ideally you get used to sleeping on planes and other things that are good for your health. So,
well, we got the whole strategy behind that too. So just, you know, so my routine is, depending on the way I go, and Colleen's going to kill me for this, but I usually take a really hardcore sleeping pill. I have loop earplugs and then an eye mask. And I don't take meals on planes typically. I just zonk out. Because a lot of the meals on planes too, they're high in sodium, so you just feel like you're just sitting there and you're just getting bloated the whole time. So it sucks.
I take all the water that they'll offer on planes if I'm awake.
Oh
yeah.
Yeah. All the drinks too, right, Matt? So
right. 8 whiskeys. I sleep like
8 whiskeys. I did that once coming back from Spain. This was back many years ago, and that was nice, but. Anyway, different story. I was a lot younger then. I was still in college.
Colleen's going to kill you after this, or at least give you
That's fine. No, that's she's like, oh, take notes. Don't do that. That was a long time ago. But it is one of those things that does feel like the basics. Because, you know, I mean, I started working with you just because I wanted to, you know, I realized if I didn't get diet, you know, sleep and all this stuff in place, it wouldn't matter what gym I would go to. It wouldn't matter, you know, if I could hire the best CrossFit coach on the planet, you're probably one of them, right? But it still wouldn't matter at the end of the day, because I bring a really crappy of myself, you know, version of myself to the gym. And same with work, right? And same with everything else. Like there's all, you know, you get the fundamentals dialed. It's amazing what happens. But, you know, I just see a lot of people, especially in our industry, that are just running on fumes. Like, and I don't know how else to put it, but it just feels like they're not bringing the best selves that they could. You know, and a lot of it is just it's lifestyle adjustments, as far as I can tell. Again, I'm not judging anybody. It's just, it is what it is. But people just look haggard. They're always, you know, on a razor's edge of being, you know, bad tempers and everything else. And then, like I said, depending on the city you go to too, then you're going out and drinking every night too. I mean, I know a lot of people that do this still, and that's just a lifestyle, right? Finance is the same way though. Like in New York City, I mean, it's like, you know, you're basically garbage unless you can, you know, I mean, I know hedge funds, you know, your first day there, it's like you're going to get drunk with the people, and they're going to, that's part of the interview.
It's a good thing I'm not in finance. This is why I couldn't make it in finance.
Yeah, same. Matt, Matt, you said you made some adjustments to your sleep that really helped. What were some of those adjustments you made?
I mean, I think a lot of it was just prioritizing it, honestly. With all the book deadlines and things, stuff got pretty crazy, but just trying to prioritize, like, this is time for sleep. This is time for winding down. making sure you have enough allocated time for sleep. And so you're not, staying up past midnight and then getting up at 5 a.m. to do
Yeah.
work. You can do that once in a while, but if you're doing that very frequently, then obviously it's going to take its toll. And then just the basic stuff, like trying to make sure that on days when you have a lot of deadlines, you're not ignoring your basic routines, like going on walks or running or whatever it is you normally do, right?
So
Because
important. Yeah.
especially if it's a routine and you drop it, your sleep is that much worse because your body's like, wait, what's going on? Like you just worked, you sat in a chair all day. What's happening here?
Yeah. No, that's such a good point. I mean, our bodies like consistency and routine. And I think that's such a good point because, we talk about the initial lift of, making these things a priority. And of course, like the initial getting started is usually the hardest part, right? And not that it gets, you don't, I mean, I wish I could tell you like, oh, the 80th time you make this choice, all of a sudden it's going to be easier and you'll never have to struggle again. I mean, it's not the case, but the more times you make the choice to do it, the easier it gets because your body kind of goes on autopilot a little bit and it becomes a part of your life and your lifestyle. And it's less of a, oh, I want to be a person that does this. It's like, no, I am a person that does this and I prioritize this because this is good for me. And like to your point, for me, I noticed because I moved out to Utah, I wanted to be in office. So I'm working in office and I love it. And I noticed that I was eating lunch kind of while I was working. And then after I'm done with lunch, I go right back into working and was realizing that, I sit by windows, which is great. I have a great view of the mountains, which I love. But I was realizing I wasn't getting outside for like 7-8 hours of the day. And I was like, I mean, there's light in here, but the fluorescent light isn't quite the same as the actual sun outside. And that's an important thing for your body, like getting sun exposure and getting outside. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to go for like an hour long walk, just, 10-15 minutes is great. And so that was something I implemented was that when I'm eating, like I shut my computer, like it's fine for me to step away for 20 minutes. Like, if I have to, answer something, I will like right before. And then right when I'm done, like I go outside and I walk for 10 minutes and I just have that on repeat. And like you said, it's amazing on the days where I'm like, oh no, I have to, get to this thing. It's like my body gets thrown off a little bit and I'm like, I don't like this. And like you said, I think it's important to note that the stuff you do throughout the day can improve your sleep as well. So like the eating better, the moving daily, all of that stuff can help with your sleep as well. And then your sleep helps with the rest of your day and it all builds off each other.
Yeah, and I know something else you've alluded to already, Colleen, and I know this is a very big thing in pro sports training is, I'll call it sustainability, and so not environmental sustainability, but like being able to keep competing through the entire season. So if you're in football or basketball, being able to compete through the end of the tournament, if you're lucky enough to make it that far. And so if you kill yourself early on, then you're not going to maximize your performance. On the other hand, if you're really lazy early on, you won't be very successful in your sport. And I think it's useful to maybe apply a similar mentality to our jobs and to our lives. Like we hopefully have the jobs we do because we enjoy them and we do some of the things we do with family, with friends, because we enjoy those things. And so making these investments ideally makes that sustainable so we're not killing ourselves off in 2 or 3 years in the tech industry, which I really think 3 years of the really awful tech lifestyle can get to you pretty fast.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you like sleep deprive yourself for a few days and just you're going to be falling apart. I mean, Joe, like you said, you're going to be on edge. You're definitely not functioning, at an optimal level. And I mean, that's the thing. It's all about sustainability. And you brought up work-life balance. And I think sometimes work-life balance can have like almost a negative connotation. Like I remember, people trying to tell me in sports, like, oh, you have to have balance. And I was like, yeah, but I want to be great. I don't need balance.
Yeah.
and I think sometimes even I know in the workspace, sometimes I don't know, I get like I understand the intent of it and I like the intent. And something my brother and I were talking about the other day was I kind of like the term pace a little better, is that like Matt, to your point, if I know I'm going to go run an ultra marathon, I better be really smart about the pace that I'm setting for myself early on. Otherwise, I'm not going to finish. I'm not going to even get remotely close to the finish line. And so I think, and that's something that I learned, like transitioning into the data space, was that, like I'm in this for the long haul, and I can't treat it like I'm only here for, like, I'm here for a good time, and I want to be here for a long time, not just for a short good time. And so I think it's really important to set a pace for yourself, and know that, like, of course there are certain deadlines and days where, like, you're putting in a lot of extra hours. That's fine. But as long as the majority of your days have that more balance, better pacing to it, that's what's going to allow you to do good work, not just now, but long term. And I think that's the thing, is like, I mean, it's kind of like a bank account to a certain extent. Like, you got to keep putting into the savings account, like, or even a car, like it's got to run on something. And like, you don't want to get, 10 years down the road and all of a sudden, like, you're trying to cash checks that your body can't cash anymore. Cause it's like, no, like, we gave it all up. And I think that's the thing, is like, I think we're in, I don't know, myself included, it's hard to, because we want like the now, we want the instant gratification. We don't care, because we're not 60, 70 years old yet. So like, who cares? I'll worry about it when I get there. But like, you want to get there and like, you don't want to get there and not be living, a fulfilling life. And I think it's, like you said, it's not that, like, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, you have to be less of what you are now. It's like, no, if you implement these small things, you actually get to be more of what you are now, and for longer. And so I think it's about starting small.
It is. We've got some comments here. Mark Keeling says golf is the most sustainable sport ever. Yeah, probably is. I also put esports, if you really want to.
I don't know. Esports, some of those guys in esports just kill themselves, and gals.
It is pretty hard, actually.
Going, 24 hours, 48 hours.
That's true. I don't know if their sleep is very good.
Yeah, no.
They have very fast reaction times, though. Yeah.
That is true.
Mm-hmm. Adam Sorka, what's up, man? He asks, would you rather have a 145 Fran time or a data model that actually reflected the state of the business needs?
Oh, 1000% the data model.
What was your Fran time? What was your best Fran time, out of curiosity?
Oh, I think just under 2 minutes, I want to say, ish, or around 2 minutes, I think. It's funny. I don't know if I ever did, or I definitely have, but I feel like I did so many variations of Fran. I rarely did just Fran, like chest to bar Fran or heavy Fran or double Fran. And it was always like, ew. So gross. Yeah, but I can't say I'm ever going to be doing Fran ever again.
That's like my favorite workout. I think in all the CrossFit workouts.
Really?
Yeah, that was my favorite.
Oh, mine would definitely be Grace. It's 30 clean and jerks for time. Well, it's a great one.
That one's hard. That one's shockingly hard. It sounds really easy on paper, because it's like, what's the big deal?
It doesn't sound easy on paper. I mean,
well, but the men's weight, that's terrible. The men's weight, I think, is what, 135, the RX. Yeah. And what's it for women?
95 pounds.
That's it. That's all you have to do.
Yeah. Okay. 30 times.
And I'm sure it's horrible. All right.
It sucks. Well, I mean, you get past, I think, rep 15 or something, and it's like, this is turning into a job.
Yeah. It's basically, you just try and go fast enough where so your body can't really figure out what's going on. And then by the time it does, you're almost done.
Yeah, I can't remember what I did or didn't. I think it was 330 or something was my best, but that helped.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to do a lot of CrossFit, but then I don't know. I just couldn't. It got to be a bit too much, I feel like, and it's actually at Ute, they're actually trying to convince me to join the competitive team way back. This must have been a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I can't commit the time to this. Like, I see what you guys do, and it's like, you're in the gym all the time.
All the time.
Like,
yeah.
It's just, you'd have to dedicate it. Like, I had a job. It's like, I don't know how this is going to work. So
yeah, especially now it's so competitive, and even teams now, you have to dedicate so much time to it. So it's essentially a job.
It is. Well, you got all these freakish
time-wise
mutant
and
kids
everything.
coming into it now. I mean, they've been training CrossFit since like
Yeah.
the age of, since they're preteens basically, and these kids are crushing. So
It's
I
insane.
don't even know how you compete against them at this point. It's just that's like every sport though. I think once it reaches critical mass, it's like every sport just attracts the younger kids because their parents are just pushing them into it. And then it's climbing. I'm seeing the same thing in climbing right now. It's a sport I've been doing probably the longest, like almost 30 years or something. But it's like the kids coming into it now are just ridiculous. And back when I started, it was like, the old thing was like, well, like kids can't climb because they're not developed enough. I mean, it was just this old trope, and I'm like, wait and see.
Interesting.
So I was a kid at the time too, but it's interesting. And but anyway, let's see here. I guess let's talk to the basics though, right? So I mean, actionable advice for people if they're you work in tech, we work in tech, you kind of know the drill in terms of how, the lifestyles and stuff. What would you recommend are some easy wins for people?
Yeah, so easy win for sure is moving daily. So I'm not saying, hey, you got to be in the gym every day of the week. You know what I mean? But I would say getting out and moving. I know for me, having a step goal is helpful. So like if you have a watch that tracks your steps, I just seeing numbers helps me. I think that's just because like Joe, to your point, like I like having those goals and just
that's how you got into
reaching.
analytics though. I think you got into analytics, so you're nerding out on fitness data, weren't you?
Right. Right.
So, interesting.
Yeah. So like I joke, about like there's no magic combination of wearables, but I do enjoy my wearables. Like for example, for me, sleep was a really tough thing. Like even when I was competing, for whatever reason, it was by far the thing that I struggled with the most. I would do any workout I was told to do. I would eat exactly what I was supposed to eat. I would, do all the recovery work and whatnot. But for whatever reason, I was like, sleeping was tough. And it was the winding down piece, like not sitting on my phone and, being consistent about when I was going to bed and getting enough hours before midnight, in bed and waking up at the same time and all that stuff. And for me, I have an Oura ring, which I wear to sleep. And then every morning I look at it, gives me a readiness score and a score for my sleep. It also tells me, hours of REM, deep sleep, light sleep, all that stuff. But for me, it was helpful to, figure out where I'm at. Because I think, in data, like you got to be able to, if we want some sort of baseline, we got to figure out how to track it first. Yeah. So for me, it was helpful to see, okay, where am I at? Like, where can I improve? And that was really helpful. And then being able to, because I know that I'm going to see these numbers every morning, that was motivation for me to be like, well, I don't want to watch, see all these things in red. Like that's not fun. And so I think, and it's also objective. Like it's not someone telling me like, hey, you need to sleep. You should get some sleep. I'm like, I know I need to sleep and I know it's good for me, but for some reason I don't want to. Well, and so I think,
when you said when you were competing too, like you actually, the readiness score probably would have thrown you off psychologically.
Yeah. When I was competing, I wasn't a huge fan of, like Whoop or Ring, all that stuff, because for me, I would use some of it occasionally, but around big events, I would just not wear it because if I'm going into a competition and all of a sudden my thing's like, hey, you should probably take it easy today. I'd be like, no, I cannot.
Right.
And that's the thing too. Like, I don't need that in my head being like, oh, my ring says like, I'm not at an optimal performance level today. Oh no. Like, it's just, that's not helpful for, at least for me, psychologically. I was like, I can't deal with that.
Yeah.
But I think for me, now, like if my Oura ring, and that's the thing too. I think it's good to be able to connect, okay, my numbers are saying, I haven't been getting the best, haven't been doing the best with my sleep. And now I can kind of feel it. Like I can feel it. It's showing up in the gym. It's showing up in, how much effort and focus I'm able to put into my work. And I think that's the thing too. Like, it's a good check-in of, okay, like there's been 3 nights where, yeah, like my ring is telling me like, hey, like you're still like under 7 hours or whatever it is. And it's like, okay, like time to like dial it in a bit. And I think it's not about perfection. Like, it's just about consistency and progress. And so I know for me, having the numbers, whether it's the steps or the tracking the sleep, I think that's been super helpful for me. And again, none of this stuff will do the work for you. I think that's the thing where people kind of make fun of it all, of like, oh, I need to track my numbers and all this stuff. It's like, yeah, no, it's going to measure it, but like none of it, like my watch isn't going to go do my workout for me in the gym. Like, that'd be really cool if it did, but like, it's not going to. And it's not like by wearing this magic ring, I get extra sleeping powers, but it helps me to be honest with myself and hold myself accountable, because I know that that's important to me. And it's important to me because I want to perform my best in my work. And I also want to show up well for things outside of my work. Like, I want to be able to have energy to go skiing this winter. And I want to, when I'm spending time with my family, I don't want to be exhausted and grumpy and, you know, all this stuff like that's. So I think, yeah, I would say as far as places to start, just walking daily, and getting more sleep. I think, especially Matt, you talked about the wind down process. A few things that have helped me is, one, limiting light exposure at the end of the day, not just on your phone, but like if you can dim, it sounds kind of silly, but if you can start to reduce the lighting in your house or apartment or whatever towards the end of the day, that helps a lot, because that's also allowing your body to be on like a circadian rhythm of like the sun, you know, and like, okay, it's nighttime, so like less light. That has helped me. So like around dinner time, I'm like, okay, I'll just have like my one lamp on. I'm not like eating in the dark or anything like that. I mean, you could do that if you'd like.
A headlamp. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be amazing. So that's helped me a lot. Also, sleeping in a cooler environment. I know like everyone's a little bit different, but if you can sleep in a cool, dark environment, like if you don't have blackout shades, like get them. It is a absolute game changer. And then if you, like for me, I have a fan, like the white noise helps too, that type of stuff. Also with sleep being really, I mean, I know with like, we all get pulled away sometimes with traveling and stuff, but being consistent about when you go to bed, because like Matt, to your point, like our bodies like routine. And so the more you can be on a regimented, like, okay, I go to bed at this time and I wake up at this time, then your body will naturally start to get tired and be ready to go to bed at that time. Versus if it's like, you know, 9 one night, 1 a.m. one night, 11 one night, like your body's like, I don't know what to do with this. Like,
Sounds
I'm just
like my
kind
schedule.
of in like, yeah, right. Yeah. Because then your body's just kind of in like fight or flight mode a little bit. But so I would say those things have helped a lot. And just having time, I think, as far as like work goes, which can definitely be tough at times, but like being able to have a time of the day where like that needs to be done. Like I need to shut that off. And again, I know there are times where it's like, okay, I have to meet this deadline. I got to get this thing. But like for 80% of the time, consistently being like, okay, I have a time where like that stops. And like, then I wind down, because you have to have that wind down process. I mean, I wish I had the power of like, I would just lay down on my pillow and like, I'm asleep. I don't. Like our bodies need that, you know, wind down time. So definitely walking daily, especially if you can do walks after your meals, like just really short, like 5-10 minute walks.
I always
It's
do
really
that.
good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's great for digestion. It's also just kind of like, you don't have to set a timer for it or anything. It's like, oh, I'm eating. Okay, now I will go walk. So it's kind of just like keeping that as a habit is really helpful. I would also say, as far as food goes, I know for me, and I know it can be tricky, but like, especially throughout the week, if you can bring your meals, or whether you're working at home, I mean, I work in the office, so like I bring my meals in. I think that can be a slippery slope too, is like kind of going in and being like, I'm not going to bring anything and I'll just figure it out as I go. And I think you're just opening yourself up to make it harder to make better decisions. Like if you, and I think that's the big thing, is like, how do you make the obstacles a lot less, and how do you make it easier for yourself to make those good decisions? Like if I make my food and I bring it, I'm not going to go out and buy food, one, because I'm like, well, I'll save money by eating the stuff that I've brought, and I brought it, so I might as well eat it. And so I think for me, that's been really helpful. And I think also to that point, like for me, some people like to, as far as like meal prep goes, doing everything on Sunday and then kind of having it ready to go. For me, like I'll prep certain things on Sunday, but then the night before, like that's when I put it all in the Tupperware, and then like I pack it for the next day, just because in the morning, like I'm tired and it takes enough energy for me to like get up and go to the gym. I don't want to be, worried about making my meals. So I do it the night before. And as much as like, yeah, there's tons of days where I'm like, this is so annoying, I don't want to do it. Like, I think it's just, you choose your hard. Like, it's either going to be like, you do this now, or it's going to be more difficult tomorrow when you're like, I don't have anything to eat. All right, well, I don't know. There's like some fast food place nearby. That'll be my choice today. And again, not saying that you can't, like, eating out is a whole nother thing, which
Chick-fil-A is pretty good, actually.
It is very good.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing too, is that, I mean, when I was competing, like I never ate out. I shouldn't say never, but like, it was just, I don't do that. And I think it's very unrealistic to tell people like, hey, you can never eat out, you can never have a drink, you can never be social and like go have, but it's about making smart choices when you're out and about, and, not like we had talked about, not feeling like, well, I'm not having my, chicken and stuff at home, so let's just, it's a free for all. Let's go for it. It's like you can make, and that's the thing, you can make those small adjustments when you are eating out or ordering Chick-fil-A. It's like you can make tiny tweaks to what you're ordering and still enjoy it and still be with your friends and like have that. Because that's the thing, is like drinking food, all that stuff is such a social thing. And I think that's hard too, especially when someone's trying to implement some sort of change in their life. It can be a little daunting because it's not like, it may not be what your friends and peers are trying to do. And you don't want to feel like the weird one and stuff. And like I'm the weird one with the Tupperware, and like, it's okay. And like, but not always, but I'm saying like, you can still go out and still, order from the same places and stuff. And you just make different decisions. And that's totally fine. And that's the thing too. Like, I think we tend to think a little too much of like, oh, they're probably thinking like, oh, why am I ordering? It's like, they're not even thinking about it. Like, who cares? You know what I mean? Like and that's the thing, you go back to, not to make every decision you make about your food this deep thing, but it's like, okay, I'm going to order. And I think that's the thing too, is to not be restrictive with yourself. It's like, okay, what can I substitute that for? Or what can I have instead of that? It's not about like, well, here's my list of all these things I can't have. Like, that's not a smart, like, and that's not fun to think about. And I think it's better to have the mentality of like, no, it's not that I can't have any of these things. It's, I choose to have these things instead. And I think that's tied to my why. Because I want to be healthier, because I want to be optimally performing at my job, and I want to feel good doing it, and I want my energy levels to be up and all this stuff. And so I think, and again, while, like I said, these are really simple things, but I know that in application, they are not always easy because we are not robots. And so,
not yet.
So it definitely, yeah. No, just kidding. but yeah, so I think so far we've got moving daily. So that's, just walks, whatever like your favorite workout is. And then we've got sleep, having that good wind down time, having good sleep hygiene and habits. And then as much as you can, eating quality is far more important than like you want to tackle quality before we're like getting into like, oh, how much do I need to be eating of these things and nitpicking about that. Like tackling quality is like far more important to tackle first, I would say. And for me, it's just about making the like good quality food accessible to me. So I'm more likely to make those choices. So yeah. And then I think obviously managing stress is a big one, because I mean, especially in this space, like that affects everything, right? Like that's going to affect your energy levels. It's going to affect your sleep. But that's the thing. I think they kind of work in conjunction with each other. I think like the hydration, the eating, the sleeping, the moving, like that will help manage your stress levels, because your body is going to be operating at a better cadence, and just overall you're going to feel better. And like Joe, you said hydration is a good one. And I like numbers, and I like, levels or numbers I have to reach. Like a great place to start is half your body weight in ounces a day. And also as like simple as it sounds, like get a water bottle, like get something that like becomes a part of you that you take.
I travel with
everywhere.
This all the time now.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of perplexed because I'm going to be in India, and I'm kind of like, I'm not going to fill this up with that water. Maybe the bottled water, but then I have a bottle, so it's like, what's the difference?
Right.
But it's super key, I think, to have something that's measurable. This is 40 ounces here. I don't put beer in here. That's good. Actually, there's not always. I'm kidding. Actually, Sarab has a good question here. This is something I think a lot of people would be asking: is managing calories important?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would say, as far as, like I said before, I think your quality of food is more important. And I would say, as far as calories go, I would say a great place to start is, what is your daily intake of protein? Protein is definitely going to be the most important, because I think in general, a lot of us, I mean, it's the hardest one usually, I think, for the most part, like just with what's accessible in our world and whatnot. It's really easy to get, our fats and our carbs, but it's a lot harder. Like you think about traveling in the airport, you think about what's accessible, like snack wise, it's usually pretty difficult to find like some good sources of protein.
Oh, it's almost impossible.
And yeah, it's pretty tough. And protein is by far the most important when it comes to like, what should I be tracking? If you're going to be tracking anything, I would say, hydration, like make sure you're getting enough water. And then what's your protein intake? And I think
what's a good number for people?
Yeah, I would say a great place to start is, and depending on where you're at. So I think a great place to start is a gram per pound of body weight, or just under, like 75.75, or like 1 times your pound of body weight. But I would say it also depends on where you're at. So I think the first thing to do would be to just like write down what you're eating, and be like, okay, where, like we talked about, like we need to have a baseline to know like where we're going to go. So I think it's important to be like, okay, so let's say I weigh 150 pounds. So I'm trying to get to around, like 135, 145 grams of protein a day. But if my baseline right now is at like 80 grams, like that's a really big jump. So like maybe my goal is, hey, I'm going to start at 110 grams of protein a day. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to be consistent with that for 4 weeks. And then I'll up it to 130. And I'll be consistent with that for 4 weeks. I think it's really important to not try to like go into it, like jump into the deep end. Because we're trying to develop not just something for like, oh, I'm trying to look good in 4 weeks. Like this is something we're trying to build like a sustainable habit. So I would say protein is for sure the biggest one, and the quality of your protein source. And then I wouldn't get into, like, I used to count my macros when I was competing. I don't anymore. Every now and again, I'll kind of like, again, check my baseline, make sure like I'm getting enough protein in for the day. And then I would say, like with my fats and carbs, I kind of just make sure like that I'm feeling full and that my energy levels are kind of sustaining me. And I'll definitely, like, if I'm hungrier some days, like, I'm going to eat a little more. I think the thing about tracking and stuff is that I know for me, like, you can get a little too dependent on the numbers and less aware of how your body's actually feeling. And so I think sometimes, again, I think protein though is a really good one to track. But I think as far as everything else, it's really good to be able to be kind of self-audit a little bit and be like, am I hungry? Do I want more food? Versus like, because I know for me, when I was so fixated on numbers, I was like, well, this is just what I eat. So I feel like I lacked the ability to kind of self-regulate, like, am I eating because I'm hungry, or do I need more food, or you know what I mean? So I think it's but I do think it's important to have a good mix of both, or as far as like fats and carbs in there. But 100%, I would say protein is by far the most important.
It's crazy how, I mean, I look at what a lot of people eat, and I think there's actually I wouldn't call it an epidemic, but there's a serious amount of people being under-proteined in their diets. I mean, it's just sort of I think part of it's maybe the Western diet or whatever, but it doesn't lend itself really well to protein. Like, you would have to intentionally go out and try to get, because I have a food tracker here with all the foods, and I nerd out and I look at the protein in a lot of foods, and it's like, it's non-existent in most stuff. So if you're sitting there eating a bag of chips at your desk, for example, I mean, that's crazy, but that has no protein. And I think it was on, I can't remember what podcast it is, maybe Mind Pumped, but they brought, it's a bro science podcast I listen to, but they're saying, I mean, think of how many potatoes are in a bag of chips. Like, you wouldn't sit there and eat that many potatoes, but you're pounding giant thing of chips, and then you're drinking like, some 32 ounce of soda, which is all sugar. So you're getting full off that, and then you're not, your protein intake's probably, I'm guessing most people probably get like 50, 60 grams of protein a day. If I'm to make a swag.
Yeah. Well, and then the problem is that when you're having, all the soda and all that stuff, like, you're going to keep craving that more. And the thing is, if your protein's super low, you're going to be less satiated throughout the day. So like, you'd be surprised if you increase your protein, like, you're not going to be, you'll be fuller, and you won't be craving as much of that stuff. So that's kind of, I feel like a good kind of starting point is that each meal, like, do I have a protein? Do I have a fat? And do I have a carb? You know what I mean? Just to like, be like, okay, I'm checking my basis. So like, if you are going to have like the chips or whatever, like, is there a protein that you're eating with it? You know, like, I think, and that's the thing,
Big Mac,
like, yeah,
which actually has a bit of protein in it. It's like 40 grams. So
it
I
does.
know this. I checked. You're just telling me to get proteins. I'm just kidding.
But I think that's the thing too, is that also protein is going to allow you to maintain and build lean body mass, and lean body mass, like having muscle on your body. And I mean, resistance training is also, doing some sort of resistance training is super, super helpful, not just currently, but, or like in your life now, but long-term, as far as like your bone density and, your joints and back and all that stuff feeling good for a long time. And as far as like, if you're talking about body composition, like if your goal is to, drop a few pounds, like, I think a lot of people think, well, I just need to run and I need to do cardio and I need to, which that's important. And we want to do that for your heart health and all that stuff and like get a good sweat in. But as far as like, if you're putting on lean body mass, and I don't mean you have to like be huge and like look like the Hulk or anything, but like, if you're putting on lean body mass, like your metabolism is increasing. So you're burning more calories throughout the day, just moving, because you have more lean body mass on you. And the only way you can build that is through some sort of resistance training. And then you have to fuel properly. And that's where the protein comes into play. Like, your body needs to be able to build off something. So I think those are also really important things. And again, I'm not saying like when it comes to resistance training, like whether it's bands, dumbbells, kettlebells, like you don't have to be throwing around a barbell. It can be really, really really basic stuff.
Awesome. I know we're coming up on time here. Thanks so much for the fun chat. I think I
Yeah,
learned a
thank
lot. I hope the
you.
audience did too. And Matt, I hope you go get hydrated and go find some good foods in Budapest.
Cheers.
So,
That is a huge water bottle. That is impressively massive.
It is awesome. For people who want to find out more about you, how can they do that?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at Colleen Fotsch and also on YouTube, Colleen Fotsch as well.
Yep. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, definitely follow her. She's got especially her Instagram stories. You can check out her diet and her readiness scores, and it's pretty cool to see. And your workouts too. It's cool seeing your workouts,
Thanks.
how they've evolved over time from being this powerhouse in CrossFit, especially to I think definitely more lifestyle training. But even your lifestyle training though is definitely still very. I mean, these are good workouts. So I mean,
Thanks.
Yeah. So awesome. Well, thanks to the audience. Next week we have Lucas Schulte, and we're going to be talking about sequel compilation and fun stuff like that. So a topic that's very relevant or related to this topic. I'm just kidding.
Analytics.
Analytics.
Probably,
Yes.
right?
No, but thanks for coming on. I feel like this is just a topic that is definitely, it needs to be talked about. It needs to be addressed. And I really feel like this is one of the things where every tech person I've talked to, in the back of their head, this is something they're deeply thinking about, but they don't know how to get started, or there's a lot of reasons why they're not going to do it. And so we started rushing the topic here. So awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Colleen. Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Matt. I hope you enjoy your evening. Hopefully you can get outside and go for a nice stroll. So it should be nice out there. So.
That is the plan. Yeah, the weather here is amazing. So
it seems like it. Awesome. Well, thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.